Buckle up. You're going undercover with private investigator Bobby Young. Crossing the crime scene tape into the criminal underworld. This is Evidence Uncovered.
The search continues for a missing woman, and we're learning more about the man with whom she was last seen.
And the last time someone did hear from her, it wasn't much of a conversation, but left family members with chills. Last Monday, a friend tried to call. All she heard was a woman's voice crying, and then the phone went dead. Metro Police believe foul play may have played a role in Letitia's disappearance. Now the family is putting their trust in God that Letitia will be found alive.
All right, let's kick it off, Janine. So tell us about your background and experience.
Obviously with Metro Nashville Police Department, I came on in January 1st of 1985.
I was one.
You don't have to say that. But made it through the academy, came out. I actually worked patrol for almost 14 years before I transitioned over. They started a program where they had put detectives in each of the precincts. And so my supervisor came to me and said, I think you'd, like to do that. And next thing I know, we were just being handed cases. The way that it was set up was originally basically whatever report came in, it was assigned. One may have been theft of property, the next one may have been an assault, and then at that time, everybody took their turn working murders. So it was a different day every day. You never knew what you were going to walk into. A lot like patrol. That's what I always liked about when I worked patrol, is that the days were never exactly the same. You always had new upcoming, things going on. And so that was probably the most exciting part of it, is you never knew what your day was going to bring. So it's very much like working a puzzle. You take all the pieces that you've got and try to put them together to figure out who did it. So
sounds like PI life.
Yes, it is, very much so.
And let's talk about the body cams y'all had back then.
None. They did not exist. No, there were no cameras, and sadly enough, the whole concept of any kind of video surveillance and that kind of stuff was in, just the very beginning. It hardly exists. You would walk into a market that got robbed and say, can you give me a description? And you had to rely on actual witnesses, the clerk that had the gun pointed in their face, and they're terrified. And so they don't even remember half of, what happened. So we've come a long way as far as utilizing cameras and all the different electronics and things like that we have today.
So when your son-in-law had the idea of retiring very early and starting a company, what was your idea with that?
Well, honestly, when it came up, I had already been trying to project my retirement because, I had been there 32 years and knew that with vacation and everything, even if I took it right away, I had like 33 years on the books. So I was definitely ready to retire. Probably would have worked maybe a couple more years, but no, the whole idea of starting the private investigations company was really a great idea, I thought. And being able to actually work cases and not, have all the restrictions and things that you have. Not that we do anything, in the private investigations end of it, not that you do anything differently, but for instance, I said, whatever cases came in, you were assigned. And so that meant that even though I had, 40 open cases, if I got 10 more cases that week, I still had to move on those. I actually had one year that I worked over 480 cases. And granted, and I say again, that was from, simple assault, theft, all the way up to homicides. So you could really build up your caseload, and I did not have that
That's a
many
lot.
open.
That's more than one a day.
Exactly.
And you don't work every day out of the year.
Right, exactly. So, it can be overwhelming, and there's some that, in my opinion, even as a police detective, you did not get to give the case the attention that it needed. If you hit a dead end, there were times that you just had to let it go. And, you had to go ahead and close it so that you could move on to other cases. So being able to do this, and granted, at first it was just a few cases at a time. And then as time went on, then we got a little overwhelmed, but we had the opportunity of
Had to learn how to run a business.
I had to run a business, and we got to hire other great detectives and stuff that helped us, and so that's actually worked out really well. Over the years, we've been very fortunate, and we have been able to hire and still have several fantastic investigators. So.
Absolutely. Well, let me talk a little bit about myself, because I like to do that. So I was with Metro Nashville Police, as you know. We didn't know each other when I started in 2007. And, my dad was in law enforcement for probably 35 years. And then, unfortunately, he was one of those terrible statistics where you put blood, sweat, and tears over your entire police career, 30 to 40 years. And then I believe the stat is retired officers that put that much time in just don't live past 10 years. And unfortunately, he got cancer and then died 9 years. So he almost made it. But he loved the job. He loved watching me excel and do all the things that I was able to do. Started off just like you, Janine, in patrol, and then you work your way up, because not many people want to stay in patrol their whole career, although we know a few of those. And I believe they're probably more salty than anyone else. But you see a lot of things. Like you said, every day is different. And, really that's what even today is about, is every day is different. We could get a call here in 30 minutes about a murder case to work, or, it could be a theft of a car. It could be a security gig. You just don't know what you're going to get. It's unpredictable, but that is, I think, what drives us and fuels us to work harder and do that. So with my career, I was there approximately 11 years. I know it's not compared to 32, but I was there, saw a lot of things. I was able to do things that no other officer, well, maybe a few would see, but I was wiretap certified, so I had a very complex and unique background, investigative background and skills, because what I did is I'm a visual learner, so I just looked at these people and looked up to these people that were teaching me, and I wanted to learn the right way, because at the end of the day, I knew I wanted to target drug trafficking organizations, but I didn't want to stop at just a kilogram of cocaine or 5 kilograms of heroin or 100 pounds of marijuana. I wanted to make sure that I could follow that all the way back to the source, which sometimes the truth is it was over the border. Well, it was a little dangerous, so I tried to work it where I could get all the way up to that point and then put a really good case together, because at the end of the day, you're only as good as your report. We have our reports right here. We're going to go into the very first case we've ever worked with covert results, and it was in 2018, which was a few years ago. And, we may not be able to remember every single detail, but that's why you write really good reports. And, we're good investigators as well. So, at the end of my career, we had the largest cocaine seizure in Nashville history. It was over 100 kilograms of cocaine, and ended up writing a book about it. It's on Amazon, called The Good Line. But, that took a toll on everything, your mind, your body, your family, and everything. And, I started realizing that maybe the department, maybe some of the people around you, maybe they don't have your back. And some of the supervisors, a lot of the supervisors were great, but there's always one or two that didn't have your back and were not great. And, I just got to the point where I was pushed to the edge where I could not do what I wanted to do. I could not work a case. I had a supervisor, maybe multiple supervisors, say, Bobby, you cannot do a search warrant this week. Like, stop working. And I just thought that was so crazy, that we would have a supervisor, even a lieutenant, that would tell us, hey, this week you guys just sit in the office, don't do anything. And I don't like that, obviously. I want to be moving and working and investigating things and keep my mind going. And I just knew that there was a ceiling. And at the time that I decided to retire in my career, the ceiling was pretty low. And I knew that I could do a lot more. So I just basically had some confidence that I could leave law enforcement 11 years in, no check, no insurance, no nothing, and start this thing and make it happen. And, I have no regrets. I miss law enforcement some here and there, and the people were great, except for a couple. But, that's like in any job. So I loved it, and I guarantee you that we would not be as successful today without that experience. So I'm definitely grateful for that. So let's talk about the very first case. So I can tell you exactly, because I do remember, that when I decided to leave law enforcement, I called my supervisor, which ironically, this supervisor works for us in security now. So I thought that was kind of cool that when he retired, he decided to give us a call and want to work with us. But my very last supervisor with Metro Police, I reached out and I said, hey, I think I'm going to go ahead and retire. And his response was, oh, we know. So I guess it was no secret. I guess with Metro Police, or probably like a lot of police departments, there aren't a lot of secrets. You tell one person to not tell anybody, and then that just means you can only tell 5 people. Don't tell any more than 5, but you weren't supposed to tell anyone. So that's how that goes with the police department. But I told my sergeant I was done, and I asked, what do I need to do? And he said, send me an email that says, this is my 2-week notice. Seemed very simple. Maybe I was naive and thought they would throw me a party, or maybe like say, hey, do you want to stay? Or, something like that. And I got nothing. Crickets. Nobody called me, nobody texted. It was just, I think the people around me, my supervisors, my close friends, coworkers, they knew I was done. And they also knew that the type of person I was, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I had been telling people that I was going to start a company. So March 9th, 2018 was the last day at Metro. And I remember most of it. Because usually when you retire, I don't know if you had this, but you probably remember, what do you get to do on your last day?
Turn in all your equipment.
Turn in all your equipment.
They want everything. Everything they gave me over 33 years, they wanted back in one day.
In one day. Yeah, 33 years. Yeah. So usually they would have somebody come pick you up and drive you around and do all these things because you got to go. They don't make it easy. You got to go to different places, turn this card in here, turn this badge in here, turn this gun in here, this magazine in there. So, wasn't easy, but that was my last day. I remember taking a picture of my commissioned police card that said police officer. And then the next card right next to that, it said retired officer. So it was official. I was done, retired, March 9th, 2018. And it was on a Friday. And then the very next day, we had a business.
Yeah.
So luckily I had some supportive family members around me that ran businesses and also in entrepreneurship. And we had done the research, had a business plan, and launched a website and all the social media that was available in 2018. And boom, we were open. So I didn't take any days off and still have not had a day off since March 9th, 2018. But so March 10th was the first day Covert Results was born. We were a company focusing on private investigations and armed security. That was it. You know, the armed security space, want to stay relevant, do a great job, have great officers, active and retired police and military only, people that have been there, done that. And the PI division, I mean, obviously me and you were running it. It was just us. That was it. Just me and you, 33 years as a detective, and I had 11, and we didn't know what we were going to get. But that's like being in patrol, right? That's like being, in the beginning. Do you remember the very first day that Covert Results was open? Do you remember sitting by the phone waiting it to ring or waiting for me to call, or do we even remember at that point?
I think I remember more than anything just trying to get together how we would respond, like going through that mental kind of steps depending on, what the call was, having the reports, being ready, making sure, even then we had, our little recorders and stuff like that. The same things that we had used on the department, we kind of felt like we had to have, all that kind of stuff. But I think it was more just the anticipation, waiting until we did get those calls. So,
yeah, and the very first case was, as we call the first call, probably one of the most exhilarating and the word I would use is craziest cases that we've had in 8 years. Even though we've had thousands of cases, and we have lots to talk about over the next couple years. And they only keep coming in, and a lot of them even get crazier. But this one, we were definitely not ready for. I was a little taken back. So I answered the phone, and this was on March 15th, and I believe it was later in the week. I think it was a Thursday.
yeah.
And it was later in the afternoon. I get a call from a gentleman, and I like to know who calls us in the first place. So, the client had said, "Hey, my stepdaughter has been missing since Saturday night." And I thought, well, how can we help? And he went on to tell me a bit about what was going on or what they knew at the time. And then I asked him, well, how did you get our information? I did not tell him that this was a brand new company that we just started, because in my eyes, we had 40 something years of experience. So this was nothing new. It was just a little different because now we're in the private sector. So take that call, and by the time we hung up, I had learned that this client had gotten my number from one of my lieutenants that I worked for. And you remember Mac.
Yeah.
You might have some funny stories about Mac, but he had been on the department a long time. So my first thought is I really appreciated not only a coworker, but also a leader within the police department and my own supervisor at different times passing our name off and trusting in us. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about, is
Right.
trust and, accuracy, integrity, honesty, doing all those things. So take the call, get the information, and I'm sure I called you after that and said, hey, we have our first case. This is a missing persons case. Family's really upset, and we need to get going. So do you remember that?
I do. That I do. and just trying to get information on the missing girl and, well, lady, I shouldn't call her a girl, but yeah, just getting the information on her, and starting with, you just basically start with the timeline. The last person that saw her, and then work your way back. And we were truly at a big disadvantage, because she had been missing since Saturday. Being an adult, when she didn't show up for work, that was the biggest clue, especially to the family, because she never missed work. She was, she was a good employee. There was no reason. That just wasn't in her demeanor. She did not do that. And so her family, it's one thing if you didn't see her maybe for over the weekend, but when she didn't show up for work and work started calling, going, hey, where is she? That's when it got really serious. Of course, at that time, they're turning to the police department. They're trying to file a missing persons report. And the problem is, if there is no specific reason to know that, in order to file a report on an adult, I mean, you have to have something. People have the right to not show up, not to go. So the police
Maybe they don't want to be found.
Exactly. And so the police department was kind of pushing back, saying, just because she didn't show up for work one day, and just because, she hasn't come home, does not mean that she's missing. She may just have decided to go on vacation or something. So they were really pushing. So finally, because of the fact that, she did have children, they hadn't seen her, she didn't show up from work, finally the police department did take a missing persons report. I don't believe at that time that they were actually looking at it being a missing persons, because they just had nothing to justify any kind of foul play or anything like that. But they turned to the police department and they're going, hey, now this was Monday. We last one seen her on Saturday. And so now the time is getting longer and longer. So they were really pushing the department, and the department was kind of going, yeah, don't really know that we can do anything yet unless you can give us some more information. So hence her father, or stepfather, excuse me, he's the one that reached out to Mac, and I do have a really good story about Mac. But yeah, he was the one that basically called us and said, "Hey, they're sitting there and not doing anything. Is their feel?" And I know a lot of people, that do file the reports with the department, they do get really frustrated because, like you say, they have to have all of the the pieces to the puzzle to start their investigation. They can't just go, okay, you say they're missing, and let's go. And besides that, like I said, they've got probably hundreds of other reports, cases that they're going to be working. So
limited resources.
Yes, and we were able to go, yes, we can help you, and we're going to figure out everything we can. And like you say, that's where we started. So.
Absolutely. So with that, obviously not only running a business, but I think the kind of people that we are, and the investigators and the background and all the experience, we just knew that time is of the essence. And not only are we trying to help a client, we're trying to get our business off, going, have a good start with our business, a good reputation, which we already had, but we want to do a good job. But at the end of the day, we want to help people. And we also want to find this missing lady. There was a lot of people that cared for her, and she had kids, and, so we did get to work. And I remember that very next day, we did the thing that I think any normal investigator would do, is boots on the ground approach. I mean, right. You remember going to the neighborhood, like in Northwest Nashville. Right. So we went out there to the neighborhood and we just started knocking on doors. I mean, there is a little bit of a playbook when you do these things. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to talk to people. You got to know how and be confident to approach. Make sure you have a card as well. But we went door to door, like asking for information. And I don't know if you remember, but I think there was about 10 or 15 doors that we knocked on, and maybe one, maybe two doors actually opened and gave us information, which wasn't much, because what's the kind of the saying, whether people want to help or not, is, well, I didn't see anything.
Right.
Or
Don't want to be involved.
Don't want to be involved, or I don't know anything. And unfortunately, that's what you get in a lot of cases that go on. So the last house, and I think we may have done this on purpose, we knocked at the missing lady's house, and we knew that she had adult children or older children, and we ended up talking to the son. And I know I specifically asked, hey, have the police been out here? Have they knocked on doors? Have they talked to you? And he said no, which, again, like you said, they have policies and procedures to follow, and they probably got hundreds of cases, and this was an adult lady. So, I thought that was something that may have been done already, but, so we took the time to sit down with the son and talk with him and learned some new information. Friday, March 16th, 2018, 1:25 p.m. Gonna knock on some doors starting at 20 Jordan Ridge Drive. Hey, how are you? Hey, investigator, private investigator.
Okay.
Is it your mom?
Yes, ma'am.
That's missing? Okay. So y'all haven't heard from her since Saturday?
No, it was Saturday around. I haven't talked to her since Saturday around like 5
Who was it exactly that was on the phone with her? We were told that she was on the phone with someone that she was trying to whisper, and then the phone went quiet and everything.
There was somebody from work, because they wasn't really, because my mama, she wouldn't miss work like for nothing.
Where does she work?
She works at AT&T.
Okay.
So the lady, she was calling her, and then so finally she ended up picking up. Because like before that, you know how like on the phone it'll say, sorry, can't talk right now. So I guess somebody was trying to decline it and hit that.
Right.
So she called right back. And then that's when she had picked up, and then she heard like somebody was fighting over the phone or something. And then ever since then the phone was completely off.
And that was Saturday, or?
That was Monday.
Monday. That was Monday.
Do you know what the lady's name was?
Yes, her name is. And I have her number if you need it. Well, we knew something was up, but even before she had went to work, because she normally don't leave like that without letting somebody in the family know.
And you all had last seen her on Saturday. Did you all see her that morning or that day?
Oh yeah, I saw her, because
Okay.
I had left to go get something to eat, and then I came back, and then when I came back, she was still here. Later on that evening, I ended up leaving out again to go out with my friends and stuff, and then that's when I got a call from my auntie in the morning, said, is your mama downstairs in the room? I was like, I think so, because her car is still in the garage. So she was like, can you go down there and check, and then call me right back. And then that's when I went in her room, and then like.
So this was Sunday morning?
Yes, this was Sunday morning right here. And then I went down there checking, and she wasn't in there.
The boyfriend. Does
yeah.
he also just
He
live here
was
also?
living here. I guess she was trying to break up with him since January, and then he's just been popping up at her job and stuff, like just randomly trying to get her back, like sending her flowers, and then like she's not even knowing, because she blocked his number.
Okay.
So he's calling her from different numbers and stuff.
Is her cell phone upstairs?
No, she
Purse?
it was with her.
So-
She took everything with her, like her keys, everything.
Normally, if you're abducted, especially she was at home, unless you know that she went with somebody, they're not going to let you take the time to get your keys and your wallet and all of that. So it sounds like whoever she went with, at least initially, she went willingly.
And then my auntie said that she was with somebody named like he was one of my coaches back in the day, and they used to be cool.
Did she say when, or like just recently?
This was Saturday. I think he was actually the last person that she actually was with.
So executive protection isn't about standing next to someone, wearing a suit and an earpiece. It's about controlling the environment before they even arrive. At Covert Results, our EP teams conduct full advance work, site assessments, ingress, egress planning, threats, protective intelligence briefs, and coordination with local law enforcement. From private events to national level appearances, Covert Results mitigates the risk before it becomes a headline. You know, some of that new information can take you a different direction, right? I mean, this was a case where there was a lot of people involved. We did dozens of interviews, and you get information from somebody that thinks that this person did it or this person may have kidnapped, and we didn't even know what we had at that point. I mean, all we know is that we were hired to investigate a missing person and that they had made a report with the police department. That's it. So, do you remember some of what the son told us?
I think my first impression of the young man was the fact that his mother has been gone, you know, since Saturday, and he did not seem alarmed. And I know that was one of the things that I wrote, you know, that it was interesting to talk to him. And I believe he was 18. So yes, a young adult. And, you know, at that time, you know, they don't confide everything. Mom was divorced and, you know, so I'm sure there was a lot of history in there. But for an 18-year-old to be at home, just going through the motions, and mom hasn't been home in, you know, 5 days, 6 days almost, it was concerning to me that he really was not upset. So, but even though I remember asking him, does she do this? And he said, well, never without letting somebody know. So, you know, evidently she did leave sometimes, like maybe on weekends and stuff like that, but they always knew. So that was the only, you know, real thing. But he did not seem concerned about it, which, you know, I thought, you know, if at that age.
And at that time we were still under 1 week, which
Right.
in the grand scheme of things seems very long. But I mean, I remember the detail. He told us that he didn't even go into her room
Right.
until a day or two later. Yeah. And someone had to tell him, well, hey, did you go into your own mother's room where you also live? So yes, definitely odd. Who knows, maybe the relationship between the two was, hey, when my door's shut, you leave me alone. You don't come in there.
Absolutely.
So we don't know. But, you know, one of the pieces that he gave us was that he gave us a name of who the missing person was with that Saturday night. And what do they tell you in Investigator 101 is go to the last person that saw them.
Right.
I mean, there's how many been hundreds of probably thousands of murder cases where the last person that was with someone has been charged with murder and has gotten convicted, even with no weapons or bodies and things like that. So, you know, I felt like when he told us that, I was like, oh, this is a big lead. Like, we're excited. You know, we're ready to go find this guy and tackle him, not literally, but, you know, find him and talk to him. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the way you talk to people, the way you interview people is one of your biggest weapons. Mm-hmm. So I think the guy's name was Willie. So we, of course, had a phone number for Willie. The son provided that, or somebody through the family. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's not really the best tactic to call somebody over the phone. Now, you know, in Tennessee, it's a one-party state, so investigator, if you know what you're doing as an investigator, you're typically going to record the conversation, whether they know it or not. And, you know, that's part of the things we do to make sure that if we are able to gather some information, that we know it's all true and correct because it's on recording. So we grab our recorders and we go to the car, and we didn't know where this guy lived, so we just call him. And And we're talking to Willie, and, you know, automatically, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember exactly what he said off the bat? I mean, we've already talked about this, but his kind of statement about the whole thing. Do you remember what he said?
No.
He said, "I don't want my name in it.
Okay, that I do.
I don't want my name in it." And, you know, again, it just goes back to how difficult some of these investigations can be because people don't want to give information. And I think, you know, they don't want their name in it. They feel like they could be, you know, out of fear of reprisals or somebody coming at them because they said too much, or they have to go to court and testify. You know, that's a whole nother episode. But so we talked to him, and I think off the back, we pretty much got the sense, even though he didn't want to be involved, he was telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And he agreed to meet with us. He agreed to meet with police, because I made that very clear that we were not police anymore, just private investigators. And I felt like he was telling the truth. What he told us was that they were hanging out earlier in that day on Saturday. Then they went to a local restaurant. Then Willie dropped her off at her car. So one thing that he told us, though, if you remember, is that she was texting a lot. And, you know, especially younger people, that's all they're doing is on their phones these days, texting. But apparently this was uncommon for this lady. And that's what Willie had told us is, look, she was texting somebody and something was off. And I dropped her off at her car at the restaurant around 6 p.m. on Saturday. And she was supposed to come out and go out that evening, but never made it. And then, as you said, when she didn't show up to work on Monday, that's when the bells really started going off where something's wrong. So, you know, we get the call that Thursday, we go boots on the ground, we're knocking on doors, we're talking to people, we get a big lead, we think, you know, maybe this guy knows something more, and then we figure out he really doesn't. So then we start looking into what the client originally told us. So the client and the missing lady's family, they all were telling us about one individual. And that individual had a lengthy criminal history. And the lady and this guy, James, you know, they dated on and off for several years. And it was one of those on again, off again relationships that didn't really seem to be going anywhere. And I think everybody knew that this guy was violent and that he could have done something, but we don't know because she's just missing at this point.
Somebody, somewhere, knows something.
The family will offer $2,500 for anyone who may know where Letitia Lane is.